Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton. Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January 15th, 2020. Guando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's getting kind of miserable down here. You know, we don't have football games to look out for in Charlton here in the South during this time of the year. All the teams in the South have been eliminated. We won the national championships in college football, but we got to figure out something to do the rest of the winter.
It's called basketball, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app. Big C, I want to give out our National Suicide Hotline because we love our military veterans. We do it more than once a year, Big C. If they need some help, call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, you have to think about your veterans every day of the year, Charlton, not just Veterans Day, and try to find them a way to get them some help for the struggles that they go through emotionally and physically, you know, after serving our great country so admirably, Charlton. And suicide has become a horrific disease amongst many of our veterans as well as our citizens in society. And everyone doesn't have access to a cell phone. So if you see a veteran or some other citizen that is struggling and in need, don't hesitate in offering them an opportunity to call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, because that person that you help, you may be saving a life.
Maybe saving a life. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And hopefully get some help. There's a lot of good things going on in the sports universe. We had some debates going on last night with the Democrats. I think there's only like 6 people remaining, Big C, but we'll see what happens. If Bernie Sanders wants to give me free health care and wipe out my college debts for myself and my children, I'm voting for Bernie, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always nice to hear what people that are running for political office state, but you have to understand that when they're in that office, unless they can get representation from the Congress and the Senate to follow along that path that they lay, Charlton, we end up as society with nothing.
Same old thing, but I'm still voting for Bernie, Big C. I like his message, and I really like his tenacity. He's a fighter. I love the way that people fight. You know, speaking of fighting, I want to talk about some Pro Football Hall of Fame, centennial class. But before we get into that, Big C, when I think about some notable early retirements in the game in the NFL, and everybody loves NFL football, I'm sorry that you feel bad because there's no football being played in the South. I'm sure some good old boys will at least play some flag football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's kind of slippery. We've had all this rain going on down here, so it's hard to get a flag game going and you don't have a dome outside facility.
They had a TV commercial with Jerome Bettis. He's missing football too. That good old boy from Notre Dame and played for the Steelers, he was missing some football. They were playing a pickup game with some good old boys and I guess the regular park, and they were up 49-0, and he was all proud of himself, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is how a lot of former athletes do it, Charlton. Yep. They love to reminisce about the past, and if you can go out there and pick on some undersized, slower guys, Charlton, it makes you feel great.
Yeah, he was a little bit heavier than when he played at Notre Dame and also the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's still all fair and love and war. Luke Kuechly, Big C, 28 years old. Last season was 2019. Rob Gronkowski, 29 years old last season, 2018. The great Andrew Luck, 29 years old, Big C, last season, 2018, the great Calvin Johnson, he retired at age 30, and his last season was 2015. And the great Patrick Willis retired at age 30 last season, 2014. You know, they have so much money now, they don't have to wait until they're told to leave before they decide to hang up the cleats. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't understand what the term early retirement is.
Yeah.
You know, back years ago, Charlton, when I played and even before me, you had to play as long as you could to try to put up enough money to have a nest egg for once you retired. If you look at a player now, Charlton, your signing bonus, realistically, if you're a first-round draft pick, is enough to set you up for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and say, I got to put in a 10-year career. So I never understood the term early retirement. When those players that you just named retired, Charlton, all of those players had somewhere between $30 and $50 million that they had earned in their NFL career already in the bank.
At least,
So if you're talking about early retirement, you got $30 to $50 million in the bank. I don't know how people consider that early retirement.
Yeah.
You got fans saying early retirement. They're not going out there taking that beating on their body mentally and physically, going through that doldrums, Charlton. And those players that you looked at that retired, only one, Rob Gronkowski, realistically had a chance to win a Super Bowl title. The rest of them, it was far-fetched.
Yeah, far-fetched. I know when Calvin Johnson walked away, people said, I can't believe he's walking away. But when you got several, 30, 40, $50 million, you're not walking away. You're walking into things, Big C. But I still wish those guys nothing but the best. I just hope we don't find them playing pickup football games with Jerome Bettis on the TV show. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't think that, Charlton. These players will, fade away into the twilight. They will spend time with their family, do the things that they've always aspired to do, Charlton, not having to have that workout regimen and also that rehab regimen. Luke Kuechly has missed an entire season in his short 7-year career based on concussions, Charlton. That's how many games he's missed. So he's looking at the long-term health of his life, not worrying about what a fan or the media think.
That's a lot, especially when you got multiple $1 million in your multiple bank accounts. That's always good. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame Centennial class, we talked about the coaches, and I still feel bad about Tom Flores. I hear a lot of people in Northern California, I follow a lot of media around here, and everybody's still talking about how, he didn't get invited to dance. You ever get invited to a dance and no one asks you to dance, Big C? He's invited to the dance because he's one of the NFL coaching alumni as well as former players, but he still hasn't been asked to dance, and it's just a shame. But as much as that burns my stomach, Big C, I still want to honor some of the guys that got in. The great Bill Cowher from 1992 to 2006, 2 Super Bowl appearances. I think Flores had 4. I mean, as a player and a coach, it doesn't make any sense. 1 Super Bowl title. I know Flores had 2 of those, Big C. Doesn't make any sense. Jimmy Johnson, Cowboys 89 through 93. The Dolphins 96 through 99. Johnson, he was the architect behind the Dallas Cowboys turnaround, and that led them to 2 Super Bowl titles. Even Flores has 4, though. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it is unfair that Tom Flores is not in Pro Football's Hall of Fame. And you wonder what the criteria is if Tom Flores cannot get in.
I know.
When you have 4 Super Bowl rings, 1 as a player, 3 as a coach, and nobody else that was elected from the coaching side has that many.
No, not at all. It's embarrassing. I mean, we got to fix things. We talk about NFL and referees that blow a call, Big C, the thing down in New Orleans. I guess every year down in New Orleans. But we talk about what happened in a national championship game. Maybe a ref misses a call. But when you miss the call to call Tom Flores, I mean, who's making the induction anyway? Maybe those guys should be replaced. Big C, the senior inductees, you think about Jim Covert, a lineman for the Bears, 1983 to 1990, a 2-time All-Pro selection during his 8-year career with the Bears. Big C, your thoughts?
An outstanding offensive lineman, Charlton. He blocked for Dan Marino at the University of Pittsburgh, went on to block for Jim McMahon on that 85 Bears team, and Walter Payton, Charlton, that won a Super Bowl.
Winston Hill, lineman, New York Jets, 1963 to 1976, and the Rams, 1977, an 8-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion in Super Bowl III. Big C, your thoughts?
One of the more dominant offensive tackles of his era is Charlton, blocked for Emerson Boozer and Matt Snell in the backfield, as well as we know the acclaimed Joe Namath in Super Bowl III, Charlton, in that upset win over the Baltimore Colts.
You know, when you're talking about the great Joe Namath, I think he's in the Hall of Fame, but Flores is not, and he has 3 more Super Bowl appearances as a player and coach combined than the great Broadway Joe. And a guy that I remember growing up, because this guy caught my eye so many times, the great Harold Carmichael. He was a receiver for the Eagles, 1971 through 1983. The Cowboys, 1984, Big C, a 4-time Pro Bowler, the Eagles' all-time leading receiver. He led the NFL in receiving in 1973, and I still remember his name when I was a little boy growing up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when people talk about the big receivers of the NFL today, Harold Carmichael was the originator of that, Charlton. 6'8" wide receiver, and as you said, led the NFL in reception yards and a all-pro receiver.
Yeah, and he had that size that usually you would see reserved for basketball players, Big C, but for him to do it over the field, you know, he was a big target for the defensive backs coming up on him, but I really still remember him. Brought me a lot of great memories as a young boy. Bobby Dillon, safety, the Green Bay Packers. Going back to 1952 to 1959, Dillon, he was a Pro Bowler 1954 through 1958. He remains Green Bay's all-time leader in interceptions. He had 52 interceptions in 94 games. And Richard Sherman saying, try me, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about that, and that's playing safety, Charlton.
Yep.
That means he's roaming the field, knowing what's going on, being the quarterback on defense, and to have that many interceptions and still hold the Packers record till this day.
They need the Bobby Dillon Award, Big C. That good a boy, he was picking them up. He's like a radar. He was finding where they were going with the football all the time. There's another great player. I mean, these old-timers, they did it, and maybe they couldn't walk away early, but the great Cliff Harris, a safety for the Dallas Cowboys, part of that doomsday defense, 1970 to 1979. Think about this. He earned 6 consecutive Pro Bowl selections and 3 straight All-Pro nods and a 2-time Super Bowl champion. I still remember that good old boy with a big D and the big star on the side of his helmet. Big C, your thoughts?
Along with his sidekick, Charlie Waters, Charlton had a very formidable defense there in Dallas. They made 4 Super Bowl appearances, winning 2 of them, Charlton. And he's the 5th member of that doomsday defense to be elected to Pro Football's Hall of Fame.
Would you imagine if Jerry Jones was the owner of that team, he would have had him hold out on contracts, BC. He would have said he wasn't a good enough player, but it's all fair in love and war. The great Duke Slater, a lineman. This goes way back to 1922 to 1931. Slater was the NFL's first African-American lineman. Slater started with the Milwaukee Badgers, the Rock Island Independents, the Chicago Cardinals, during the 1920s and early 1930s. Played around the Great Depression, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he played when African Americans weren't allowed to do many things in society in America. And you think about a long wait. You talk about Tom Flores having to wait. Look how long Spaders had to wait, Charlton, to get into the Hall of Fame. 98 years since his career began.
Isn't that amazing? 98 years, and I know sometimes it's just, I just want to say sometimes it seems to be, let's look at the people doing the induction into the Hall of Fame and give them a second look, Big C. Maybe they don't deserve that spot, but he still got in, and that's amazing. Big C, Mark Speedy, the Cleveland Browns, 1946, going way back in the day, Big C, 1946 to 1952. He was in the era where they integrated the military, Big C, in 1948. He was the best end of his era. He led the respective league in receptions. He had 4 times he had done that, and receiving yards twice, a 4-time AFC champion, and the 1950 NFL champions. A Big C, your thoughts?
Well, got a chance to play with Otto Graham, the greatest quarterback of his era, Charlton, and win an NFC title during that run.
Yeah, it's amazing when you go back and see, you know, these great names that are out there, and a lot of young people may not even know who they are unless they Google them, but that's why they can follow Big C Sports. The great Alex Karras, defensive tackle, Detroit Lions, 1958 to 1970, one of the NFL's most intimidating players during the 1960s. Now, Karras earned 3 All-Pro selections, 4 Pro Bowl nods from 1960 to 1965. If they'd had the targeting rule back then, he may have missed many, many moves. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's one of the featured characters in a novel written by the great writer George Plimpton that was turned into a movie called The Paper Lines. And many people remember the great Alex Karras from the movie Blazing Saddle with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder as he played Mongo.
Yeah, I remember. Didn't he knock out a horse, Big C? Or was it a mule that he knocked out, Big C? Your thoughts?
took down a horse.
Yeah,
I think that was the USC horse at the time.
No, the USC had a white horse, Big C. It's just like a lot of their coaches. They only have a certain color horse.
Oh,
Big
he's
C.
great. He got gray after that.
Okay. Well, they might resurrect him for the Alabama game. We got to have a bet on that game. They kick off in 2020, someplace down in Texas of all places. George Young. Think about this guy, named to the NFL Executive of the Year 5 times during his 18-year run with the New York Giants, general manager from 1979 to 1997, and he helped guide the Giants to 2 Super Bowl victories, and one of those victories stopped another team from matching the Miami Dolphins. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about what they did, Charlton, under George Young, the great Hall of Famers that he drafted during his tenure with the New York Giants, and the 2 Super Bowl victories with 2 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, 2 different quarterbacks. And obviously, there's so many great players. And even as we talk about great players and what they've done, Big C, I still, Tom Flores deserves a lot better treatment, especially when they show coaches breaking down and showing you how poignant it is for them to give great speeches and lacrimal speeches and how it means so much for them to be considered. And they've done 1/3 the work of the great Tom Flores, Big C, the great Steve Sable, the co-founder of NFL Films, along with his father, Ed, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011. The great Steve Sable, he played and controlled the role in the growth and popularity of the NFL during the 20th century. Every time we think about a film of the NFL and the way they played, they slow down the play, and they have the narrative, and they have the music in the background. I think about the Sable family, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, before they had all these 24-hour sports cycle shows, Charlton, there was NFL Films.
Yeah.
And it was the Sable family who educated America about the NFL and its great players.
Yeah, and it's just like anything else on film. You can always pull up in the archives and see what people did. But the great thing about the Sable family is we see what they produced. They didn't have to go into the archive to find something. They created it, and we still appreciate that to this day. One of the greatest commissioners in all of sports, the great Paul Tagliabue, served as NFL commissioners from 1989 to 2006. Not only did the league grow immensely under his watch, but there were no work stoppages during Tagliabue's time as commissioner. Everybody wants to talk about the strike season. That didn't happen under his watch, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when Paul Tagliabue took over the NFL, Charlton, he had been the lawyer for the league, serving behind Pete Rozelle. But he was a master negotiating, not only with television, but with the players, Charlton. And we saw expeditious growth under his watch in the league.
Yeah, we saw a lot of good things happen. Really, really appreciate how they worked things out behind the scenes, and players didn't have to strike, Big C. The great Donnie Snell, the great Steelers safety, 1974 to 1987. Shell was a perennial all-pro strong safety, part of that steel curtain defense, won that for the Super Bowl titles, and I think they have 4 Super Bowl titles. He was part of that defense during the 70s. He had 51 career interceptions, even though we think about other guys that were roaming around trying to steal balls too, like Mel Blount and all those other good old boys. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just as we talked about the great Dallas Cowboys safety, we say the same thing about the great Donnie Shell, a member of the steel curtain defense, 4 Super Bowl victories throughout his career with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Charlton, and also he's the 5th member of the steel curtain defense to be inducted in the Pro Football's Hall of Fame.
Isn't that amazing, that steel curtain defense? They had so many great players, and the fact that they won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, it's amazing how we talk about how great the Patriots are, but they have a lot of opportunities to get beaten back there. There were not as many teams in the league, number one, and the rules were a lot more, loose. I guess you could harm people and stick them and all that stuff, but really appreciate that steel curtain defense. But thinking of that, we talk about Tom Flores, and we talk about whether it's, Jimmy Johnson or anybody else that considers a great coach. We know what's going on with the scandals that's happening in baseball. Them good old boys down in Texas. Didn't I tell you that I had a roommate in college, he's from Texas. He used to say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, Big C. I was like, what does he mean? I hear about the same thing in high school football. I hear about it in different sports. I hear about it in all kind of politics. We know that. But I want to ask you, how would you compare cheating in the NFL compared to cheating in Major League Baseball? We've had Deflategate. We've had, Spygate. We've had the they had the coach for the New Orleans Saints. You know, he was banned from the league because they had a bounty gate. But none of these guys lost their jobs. Baseball, they threw the bat down. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the reason why baseball throws the bat down, Charlton, is that you look at, this is a predominantly white league when you look at baseball. And so they really frown upon those actions occurring because they feel they want to keep it lily white and clean and that they're above the board. They have the greatest union in all sports.
Yeah.
When you look at the NFL and 70% of its participants are African American other than the coaches, they look at things quite differently. And, you know, as baseball has been quick to banish people, Charlton, for various reasons. I mean, you look at the suspension level in Major League Baseball versus what it is in the NFL, where they suspend players half the season, the entire season, in a heartbeat. And when they catch you cheating in baseball, they show you the exodus door.
Yeah.
In the NFL, they give you an opportunity to defend yourself. So it's part of what the league's regulations are and how the commissioner is running the league. When you think about how they've been, the several commissioners that have been in baseball over the last couple of decades, Charlton, they've been stern and they toed the line.
Yeah.
They have not had flexibility like the NFL had.
That's interesting because I know I heard some people, you know, out here in Northern California talking about Barry Bonds, and you had Clemens, you know, Sammy Sosa, all these guys, Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco. They blatantly said, yeah, we cheat. I mean, Jose Canseco was ostracized by many people in media and a lot of athletes too because he told the truth, and they said the truth will set you free. But the young kids would say, I think they say you drop diamond or snitching or whatever. Snitching is what they call it. But baseball has always, and this is the thing about Hinch down in Texas. Were they cheating? Did they have a recording device? Well, Jose told everybody, not only did the players have the juice because if they wanted to hit more home runs, they juiced. Clemens was juicing. A lot of guys were juicing. He still had needles when he testified in front of Congress. At the same time, to throw out, I mean, baseball fined the Houston, $5 million, and then the ownership fired Hinch for doing the same thing that helped them win a championship. But Jose Canseco told us many, many moons ago, all those guys are cheating, Big C. Why throw this guy out when Jose told us what was going on, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, what's going on now, Charlton, is something that baseball banned, electronic communications, is that you cannot have it in your dugout. And that's what these individuals that have been suspended, Charlton, from the league and fired from teams were doing. They went against the cardinal rule. I mean, baseball is still the purest game that it was from Little League up, Charlton. It still has the same dimensions that have never changed. All the other sports have altered their dimensions. You look at the NBA. It's altered the dimensions of its playing surface, as well as the NFL has, Charlton. Baseball has stayed the same, 90 feet in the baselines, 60.6 inches from home plate, Charlton. Baseball has stayed what it is. And if you stay within the rules of that game that has always been set up, then you have no problems. But when you feel you want to get an upper hand, as a player, what difference does it make when you know what pitch is coming? If you can't hit it, you can't hit it.
Exactly.
You don't see anybody going up there in baseball batting 400. So if you're stealing signs and you don't have a bunch of 400 batters on your team, what good is it doing?
Yeah, that's very true. But I still want to ask you. You say baseball is more to tradition, and they don't want to have people go against, you know, the rules of baseball. They can't have electronic devices recording. But you also can't stick needles in your backside to gain 40 pounds of muscle, and instead of running a 4.840, you run a 4.540. Instead of bench pressing 300 pounds, you bench press 450. Instead of hitting 20 home runs, you hit 60. And they knew that was going on. So why such a stink now, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, how many Super Bowls do you think that the Pittsburgh Steelers would have won when you said they won 4 out of 6?
Yeah.
If it was not for the needle, Charlton.
Yeah.
That whole team was the first juice team in the NFL.
Yeah.
They took more steroids than you give out at a horse farm, okay? So, I mean, steroids have always been a part of professional sports, and all of them.
Yeah.
It's getting caught. Do you want to take the chance of getting caught? Look at the number of players in all leagues that have been caught for using that banned substance, Charlton, and took the suspension.
Yeah.
If you're smart enough, you don't take it. You use the work ethic. But if you're good enough to cheat and get around it, you do it.
Yeah, and I've heard some athletes say if they take and I'm not advocating anybody to do anything, but I'm also not naive. People got to know the consequences. But I've heard some people say If you take that needle, you might make $20 million a year. If you don't take the needle, you might be selling cars down at the local car dealership. And
but think about the number of guys who have taken the needle that have never made it.
That's true.
I've gone up against some of the strongest men in the United States, Charlton, in training camp that came in, and they were on the needle because people thought that they could make athletes out of them, thought they could make football players out of them because they were so strong in the gym. But if you look at the world's strongest men, Charlton, they cannot play football because they're not athletic enough. You can't play football on your back. So I've had teammates that have taken the needle.
Yeah.
Didn't mean that they were going to be starters, but they were trying to maintain a spot. I've seen teammates break needles off in their butt and had to get it lacerated out, Charlton.
Yeah.
So, but you'll have more guys taking the needle that can't play at the professional level than you have that can.
I think a lot of that is the hope that it gives people. And I've just seen a lot of guys that I've known personally, like you're saying, they chose to do it because they felt that was the only way to at least have that American dream at becoming a multi-millionaire. So sometimes you do what you gotta do. Grown folks do what they gotta do. So based on that, we know that you brought up that story about the Steelers. No wonder they call them the steel curtain, Big C. Okay, I think needles are made of aluminum, whatever they're made out of.
They were hiding behind they're made out of steel, and they were hiding behind the curtain so that they could take it.
Yeah, so they can take it behind the curtain, even though I saw some guys shoot up needles in broad daylight in the locker room. Sharing needles was crazy back in the day. But I want to ask you this question, because I think this thing with the Astros, they know they're in a business where the guys are not all clean. What do they call unclean hands? But they get a firing for whatever reason to grandstand. But I want to ask you this thought. Why do you feel that the NFL rates higher than the NBA when it comes to television viewers? I want to get your thoughts, and then I'll add my opinion. But they do rate a lot higher, and it's still the number one sport, even though people think about baseball. Football has no comparison, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the reason why the NFL rates higher than the NBA is, Charlton, because you have affiliation here in the United States. Most of the players, I'm going to say 98% of the players in the NFL are from the United States, Charlton. Yeah. Not only that, they have university affiliations. And so when you think about university affiliation and you have a student body of 25 to 50,000 students on campus, Charlton, that are enrolled every year in those universities, then all of a sudden you think about the alumni and the boosters that are affiliated with those universities. So there is an identification process as an NFL player is groomed through the college ranks to get to that point. We just saw the accolades in the national championship game down in New Orleans with Louisiana, with LSU and Clemson.
Yeah.
And look at how the ravenous fans appreciated those players on the field. And so that's the reason why the NFL has a higher rating than the NBA. If you look at the NBA, it's become a global game.
Yeah.
And when you talk global, there are dozens of players in the NBA every year that are drafted from around the world. And when you think about the fans have no affiliation with these players. They don't know what their hometowns are, Charlton. They don't know where they grew up. And when you look at the one-and-done rule, you don't have a chance to develop on the college campus, Charlton, an affiliation with the alumni and boosters. Right now, you can't name 5 top players on the college level. Last year, they had the Zion camp.
Yeah.
It was just one player carrying the weight of college basketball, and that one player got drafted in the NBA and is yet to suit up for a game. So when you look around the NBA and you can't tell where half the players are from or know their hometown or don't know anything about their background, whereas when you look at an active NFL roster and all the starters, you can tell everything back to their Pop Warner days.
Yeah, you sure can. And just to add, and I agree with that, just to add on, though, in China, I think they said there's a 500 million people that have watched the NBA or in some form or fashion. That's in China. There's only 350 million people in the United States of America. I can't say if 500 million watch the NFL. So as a global sport, when you think about the growth of it, and NBA is also developing in Africa, 400 years later, if you understand my drift, but still developing, Big C, it's growing. Football's not growing in Africa. It's not growing in China either. Basketball is. But in America, you're right. People are paying attention. And I think it has another fold also. The NFL has great theater. It's theater of the mind. You still cannot see the faces of these athletes unless they show it on TV during the pre-games as they introduce where they're from. But you play it with a helmet. It's still theater of the mind. There are no stadiums going into next year that seat fewer than 60,000. We have stadiums for the NFL that seat between 60 and 100,000. So you have more people, more energy, just like the crowd at the Rose Bowl, 88,000 at the Rose Bowl, down at the national championship game for LSU and Clemson. I think they had about 80,000, somewhere in there. And again, Oregon and Wisconsin is about 88,000. So there's more people. The largest NBA stadium holds about 22,000. And you can see their faces. So I think that mystery is still there for football. It's a more violent game. People love violence, even though they say they don't. They like to hear the hard contact, the hard tackle. And that's part of it, too, I think. Mix of your thoughts.
Well, I think the biggest thing that's killing the NBA right now is this thing called load management, Charlton, that players are taking nights off. You think about every star that comes into the city of Atlanta. They take the night off. Half the stars that go into other places, Charlton, the New York Knicks, they take the night off. When you go around and you look at the bottom tier of the NBA, and you have stars not making appearances in those games, taking the night off, calling load management or whatever they come up with now, Charlton, for players not to play. I think the fans are becoming a little disgruntled in that because you're paying your hard-earned money to go to an arena, and you know you got a team in town once a year, maybe some teams twice. And all of a sudden their star players are not playing. Where in the NFL, say you're going to take load management. Tom Brady going to take load management. Patrick Mahomes going to take load management. Aaron Rodgers going to take load management. When you start taking the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're going to take 2 games off during the season for load management because they want to take a rest, think about how that would hurt the appeal of the NFL. The NBA feels that it's a regular state of mind now that players can take off time whenever they want. When they signed up for the 82-game schedule, not the 70-game schedule.
And like you said, when we talked about players that retired early with $50 million in the bank, Big C, sometimes the load management, it's the same thing. They got so much money they don't have to play every night. We're going to come up with what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. After we take the Big C timeout, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about a lot of them good boys that play on the floor called the NBA basketball. We'll take the Big C timeout and we'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the apps that I really love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app. Big C, as we were talking earlier about NBA and then NFL, also, when you think about baseball, unless I'm wrong, the NBA is the only league, and I might be wrong, that has avoided any type of scandal that comes to steroid use, even though if you look at players today compared to players 20 and 30 years ago, they're almost 30, 40 pounds heavier on average. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, there's been players in the NBA that have been suspended for performance enhancement. Every major league in North America, Charlton, has had suspension of players for performance enhancement drugs. The NBA has not skated that at all, Charlton, and they've had many players suspended for other things also.
Yeah, just not as much of a throw in the face, a smack in the face, it seems, as baseball has been, and even football. But hey, everybody works out hard. Just keep doing your push-ups. I was talking to a former NFL player just the other day. I said, man, how do you stay so big? And he says, push-ups, man, push-ups. I said, okay, sounds good to me. So NBA mid-season grades, several teams check in at the halfway point. And with the grades might be good for some, and others are hoping that things will improve on this point of the season. I want to go down to the Dirty South, the Atlanta Hawks, give them a C-. This is the worst team in the NBA based on a 9-32 record, but they have one of the better arenas and the better cities to play in. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they have a budding superstar in Trae Young at point guard, Charlton, who is going to make the All-Star team in his second year in the NBA. But this team needs to be able to find some stability sometime soon with all these young players.
Yeah, they have to. When you think about basketball royalty, and we talk about all the things going on in the world of sports and why people love sports, well, the Boston Celtics, I would give them, in fact, I would give them an A-. The Celtics, they switched from one All-Star point guard for another in the summer. The chemistry seems a little bit better. I would say even light years ahead of what they had when they had Kyrie Irving. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Kemba Walker has been more solidifying to that organization what Kyrie Irving was, Charlton. He plays every night. He doesn't take nights off. He doesn't find things to be hurt about, Charlton. And the teammates love him.
Yeah, they love it. I want to try something different, Big C. We can mix up in the middle of a swim contest. I'm going to give some thoughts on teams, and I want you to throw your grade out there, whatever you think that grade might be. But I go to the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets are hovering. They're just below 500. They have the ugliest floor, I think, in NBA basketball, but they're in a great city. What's your grade on the Brooklyn Nets, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as I look at the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to give them a C+. The Nets are hovering just below 500. There's a lot of aspirations for next year for the Nets. They're just not getting it done now.
Yeah, they really want Durant to come in there and hopefully he can stay healthy. When I think about the Charlotte Hornets and all the great affiliation around Charlotte with the Curry family, and then you also have the great Michael Jordan, they're finally losing some close games now, but they're 15 or 28. They're still not it's still not flattering. You would think they're a good team. They have the chance to be so much better, but I'm not that impressed with them. What would you give the grade for the Charlotte Hornets, Big C? Your thoughts?
Looking at the Charlotte Hornets after they lost Kemba Walker, Charlton, I'm going to give them that C-. They seem to be in no man's land since they've come into the NBA, Charlton. In the last decade, they've played basically even basketball.
Yeah, they really have. They have so much going on in the Carolinas. You would think they would be a better program. I want to go up to the Windy City. I remember the first time I went to Chicago, it was in 1988, and I about froze. It was minus 17 degrees with the wind chill factor, and that's about how their team is playing lately. They're checking in at 14 and 27. They're not the worst team in the Eastern Conference, but there's no more of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. What would you give them as a score, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Chicago Bulls, Charlton, you have to go down the ladder a little bit and give them a D. This team is in the doldrums. They can't figure things out. They change coaches every couple of years. They have no stability in the lineup, and they're looking for a long, long winter in Chicago.
Yeah, they're looking for a long, long winter and some hot chocolate to keep them nice and warm, Big C. I want to stay up north where we go to the great city of Cleveland. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they're barely ahead of the New York Knicks. And the worst, think about this, for the worst record in the East, they're 12 and 29. This is the team that was in the NBA Finals. It seems like almost every year with the great LeBron James, Big C. But now that LeBron, remember they burned his jersey? Maybe they're still burning jerseys, but this time to stay warm, Big C. Your thoughts?
What a difference a few key players make, Charlton, led by LeBron James. This team has been stripped down to nothing. I don't know why they're holding on to Kevin Love and haven't traded him, but I give the Cleveland Cavaliers an F, Charlton, because they give no effort.
Yeah, they get mad at the coaches for wanting them to hustle hard. But maybe are they slugs? Maybe they're too sluggish, Big C, if that makes any sense for the beautiful team up there in Cleveland. Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban has a lot of money. He's on TV shows. He lives really a rock star lifestyle. He may as well just move to Los Angeles. At the midway point, the Dallas Mavericks with the great Luka Doncic, they should be thrilled that they're 25 and 15. They should just put up billboards around town about Luka. At the same time, if they build it around one player, they're still going to get knocked out in the playoffs, Big C. Your thoughts? What's the grade for the Dallas Mavericks?
Well, as you look at the Dallas Mavericks, and this is what we talked about with the European players, Charlton, they come into the NBA, they can perform, but nobody knows about where they're from. Luka Doncic has done a tremendous job, one of the top 5 players in the league at this point. I give the Dallas Mavericks a B+.
Yeah, the B+, and they're doing good marketing. They still need to do something a little bit better. I don't know what it is, but Dallas does everything big. I'm sure they'll have a lot more to improve on throughout the season. We want to stay up in the Rocky Mountain High, up in Colorado where everything's high up, Big C, if you understand my drift. The Denver Nuggets, they're in an interesting spot. They were knocked out last year by the Portland Trail Blazers, and then the Blazers went on and got swept by the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference. This is still a good team with the Joker, but can they overtake the Denver Broncos for the thing to do in the Mile High City, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they are. They're the thing right now in the wintertime because the Broncos are not playing. But, it's a little bit of disappointment going on with the Denver Nuggets. They were the second-best team in the Western Conference last year. I'm still going to bring them in at a B+ because I think that they're improving.
When you think about teams that we just wait for them to improve, I want to go to the city of Detroit, the Pistons. They're stuck in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference at 14-27. They're really they're struggling, Big C. And I just want to get your thoughts. I mean, all the sports teams struggle in Detroit, but they're trying to get back into the playoffs. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. What grade would you give the great Detroit Pistons, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, as we look at the Pistons and you talk about them struggling, you have Blake Griffin, who is out again hurt. You got Andre Drummond, who is on the trade block. I'm going to bring the Detroit Pistons in at a C- because once Drummond is gone, they'll slide down to a D.
I thought you would have given them a D+ to be consistent with the city start with a D, Big C. Maybe they should change that name to the Great Lakes Pistons, Big C. We'll see what happens in the Great Motor City. I want to swing it out to the West Coast, the beautiful city by the bay, San Francisco. Say it ain't so. Golden State Warriors. I mean, a lot of people, no one could have foreseen all the woes that have befallen the great Warriors. And when they say Warriors, come out and play, they're all in Band-Aids and canes, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as we talk about the NBA ratings being down, Charlton, this is also one of the key reasons. I would say this is one of the top 2 reasons that the NBA ratings are down. The Warriors have been must-see TV for 5 years.
That's
they were
right.
Excitement for every fan, love or hate the Warriors. And now that the Warriors are non-competitive, the numbers are showing it in the NBA rating.
Yeah, and another thing that hurts them, too, the tickets cost way too much. I know they moved to Silicon Valley from Oakland, Big C, or they moved it to San Francisco with all the Silicon Valley money. But just because you raise your tickets, it doesn't mean that people are going to pay it, and maybe they'll have some price fluctuation with that coming up in the next season. I want to go down south to the beautiful city of Houston, the Houston Rockets. You have the great James Harden. He's outdone himself again. He's like lightning, Big C. He's averaging 37.8 points a night. The great Russell Westbrook's dropping in 24.6 points. This team, I'm telling you, if they learn how to pass the ball more and not wait until 5 seconds to pass it around, they might make another run deep into the playoffs, Big C. What would you rate them?
Well, the Houston Rockets are running out of time, Charlton. They're going to have to challenge for the Western dominance sometime within the next couple of years. But I'm going to give the Houston Rockets a B- on the season. And to come playoff time, you don't want James Harden being hot.
No, I mean, he's always hot, Big C. They can't even cool him off with ice, Big C. The guy I haven't never seen a shooter like him. I know people say, yeah, but what about this guy back in the day? Never seen a shooter like Harden, Big C. Indiana Pacers, I want to get your grade on them. They got off to a terrific start. They've been chugging along, and they've been boasting a solid 25-15 record. Is good enough for 5th place in the East, but they still have that good old boy named Giannis somewhere close to the neighborhood, Big C. How would you rate the Indiana Pacers, Big C? Your thoughts?
As I look at the Indiana Pacers and they got Victor Oladipo back, Charlton, this team is going to be a challenge for anybody come playoff time. We know that they're young, they're athletic. I'm going to give them an A-, and I expect them to be in the Eastern Finals.
Really? I mean, that's a nice jump. We'll see what happens. I know a lot of people want to see Milwaukee, and they also think that maybe the good old boys from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, might have something to say with it, along with Beantown. But we'll see what happens. The L.A. Clippers, the Clippers are certainly winning. They're 28-13. They're right in the thick of the race for the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They're in the Hollywood, and I heard people say when I was down in Los Angeles, they even had some bus flyers saying there's not enough room in this town for 2 superstars. Well, they had 2 with the Lakers, and they got 2 on the Clippers, so maybe they got 4 superstars. But how would you rate them, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at where the Clippers are right now, Charlton, they're well ahead of last year's pace. They're the second-best team in the Western Conference. I'm going to bring them in as a B+, because they got too much load management going on with the team.
Yeah, I think they're trying to save that load for the end of the season for that playoff run. They might be smarter than we think. The L.A. Lakers, the good old boys right across the hallway. I want to get your thoughts on how you grade them against the 27 worst teams in the NBA. They're 29-2. They are must-see TV. They have the Hollywood crowds that show up. They're in La La Land. The Lakers are really the thing and the story in Los Angeles, more than the Rams, more than the Chargers. Maybe right there neck and neck with the Dodgers, Big C. Give me your thought on how you would grade the Lakers.
Well, the Lakers are the show in L.A., Charlton. This is the fourth version of it we saw. We saw it with West and Chamberlain. We saw it with, Jabbar and Magic. We saw it with Shaq and Kobe. Now we're seeing it with James and Davis.
Yep.
And the Lakers, they're an A+ against the teams in the NBA, Charlton, with the 27 worst records in the league. I give them an A- overall on the season. They are the best team in L.A.
They are the best team in L.A., and they hope to be the best team in the NBA after it's all said and done. Something about them good old boys down south. We're talking about the Memphis Grizzlies. Don't look now, but the Grizzlies, they're in the 8th spot in the West. I know their record's not that impressive. It's more like an Eastern Conference record. They're 19-22 to still be in the playoff spot. I don't like the fact that they got there by a team leaving Seattle. But that's what big money does, Big C. But how would you rate the beautiful city of Memphis and the Grizzlies, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the Grizzlies are hanging in there, Charlton. They got the best player in the NBA draft last year, John Morant, and he's proving. He's putting in 19 points a game, and it's catapulted them, Charlton, to the AC. I give the Memphis Grizzlies a C+ on growth.
On growth. I really like what that young kid is doing down there for the Grizzlies. I want to go to one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been in my life, Big C, the great city of Miami. The Miami Heat, they're 27-12. They're a half game behind the second-place Boston Celtics. This is a team that people really haven't given a lot of a thought about being the team that comes out of the East because, of course, we have some great competition in the East. I'm going to ask you two questions. What grade do you give the Miami Heat, and then what grade do you give the city of Miami, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I give the Miami Heat an A. When you think about the addition of Jimmy Butler, and you have the young players on that roster that want to follow him, where you did not get that when he was with the Philadelphia 76ers. Everybody wanted to be on their own.
Yep.
In Miami, you can never go wrong in the city.
Never go wrong in the city. Just a great place. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. I love Miami, Big C. It's amazing the Super Bowl is going to be down in Fort Lauderdale, but a lot of the players, they'll hang out in Miami. The Milwaukee Bucks, I want to go up north. Cheesetown, the Bucks are on pace for 70 wins. They boast the best record in the league at 36-6. It's not a beautiful city compared to L.A. or Miami or San Francisco or New York, but it's still a good old wholesome hometown, Big C, unless you're trying to get some medication at midnight as an African-American man. How would you rate the Milwaukee Bucks, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you talk about that area period, Charlton, you talk about nothing but winners. You think about the Milwaukee Brewers. You think of the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship. You look at the Milwaukee Bucks on pace to win 70 games this year. I give the Bucks an A+ on the season. They have one of the most dominant superstars in the NBA in Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah, he's amazing, Big C. I love that people don't call him by the F word anymore. His name is Giannis. Big C, Minnesota Timberwolves. I want to get your thoughts on how you grade them. Get off to a strong start the season. It was soured by a lengthy losing streak and an injury to the big cat, Karl Anthony Towns. How would you rate the good old boys from Minnesota, Big C? Your thoughts?
Minnesota Timberwolves, this team has still not learned how to play defense, even when the cat is in the lineup. Wiggins is a great shooter, but when you turn to defense, I think he puts on blinders, Charlton. I'm going to give the Minnesota Timberwolves a C on the season, a C for effort.
Yeah, well, they say when the cat's away, the mouse will play. They got to get the cats in line, Big C. New Orleans Pelicans, want to get your thoughts on the beautiful city. Just looking at the national championship game and seeing the Superdome, Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and seeing the Smooth Easy, what's it called, the Speakeasy or the Smooth Easy? Smoothie Queens changed the name of the arena, and the fact that it's not beautiful compared to where it sits right next to the beautiful dome But that's football and basketball. I want to get your thoughts on the Pelicans. They had a rough start to the season. We know Zion Williamson has had a hitch in his giddy-up. They're 15-26 in the West. This team still has a lot of growth, and they could make a run later in the year. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, if you look at the New Orleans Pelicans, this is the Los Angeles Lakers from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They made that huge trade and acquired a lot of players, but I'm still going to give the Pelicans a D-minus on the season, Charlton, and that D-minus is because they can't play defense.
Can't play defense. New York Knicks, Big C, they are 14th in the East, heading into yet another lottery. They just win. They should just play the lottery. They're always in it every year. How would you rate the New York Knicks, Big C, in the last 10 minutes?
Well, as we look at the New York Knicks, they go as Tom Dolan goes, Charlton. I got to give them an F because they're just a straight-up failure.
Yeah, they've been failing. They threw a lot of their Hall of Famers out. They don't want them at Madison Square Garden, Big Z. The Oklahoma City Thunder, one of the surprising stories of the NBA, depending on who you talk to, they're 23-17, and Chris Paul looks like he's earning his money, but how would you rate them, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they are a surprise of the NBA. Everyone felt when Russell Westbrook left town that was it for this organization, Charlton.
Yeah.
Steven Adams is still playing solid, along with Schroeder and Chris Paul. I give the Thunder an A on the season, Charlton.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with them so far. Orlando Magic, they're a miserable middle of the conference at this time. They're on track to comfortably make the playoffs. But think about it, they'll probably make a quick exit unless things turn around for that franchise. How would you rate the great Orlando Magic?
Well, all the attention in the state of Florida is down in Miami, Charlton. And, Orlando is just carrying themselves, so I'll give them a C.
Yeah, they're still a beautiful city. There's so many banks in that city, you think everybody could get a loan. They could have needed a loan. Philadelphia 76ers, at the midway point, the Sixers are not where they are expected to be prior to the start of the season. They're only 25-16, and I want to get your thoughts on the city of brotherly love. How would you rate them, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this is what we talked about with Jimmy Butler leaving town and those young players not taking his advice. I'm going to give the Sixers a C+ on the season, Charlton, because they're not where they should be.
No, they're not where they should be, Big C. I expect so much out of that great franchise. I know they exited the playoffs last year up in Toronto with the great Kawhi Leonard with a nice three-point shot. The Phoenix Suns, the Valley of the Suns, judging the Suns against the standard of the league. They're 7-4 to start. It's unfair. They should not be dingling around, falling to 16-24. It's a team that has everything going. They're young. They have a beautiful city in Phoenix. How would you rate the beautiful Phoenix Suns, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Ayton went down after that 7-4 start, Charlton, and everything was placed on Booker's back. Now that Ayton is back, Charlton, maybe they'll catch their stride again. I'm going to give the Phoenix Suns a C-.
I want to swing it to the great Northwest, the Portland Trail Blazers. After making the conference finals last season, think about what the Blazers have done. They've taken a big step backwards. It's a gross understatement. They're well below 500. I know they've given Damian Lillard, maybe he's too busy making songs. He got the big contract, Big C. I know they're talking about getting rid of McCollum. Everybody wanted to go. Portland is the team that's going to take over and replace the Warriors in the West. I don't think so. Not so fast. How would you rate the great Portland Trail Blazers, Big C?
Well, Charlton, you got to give them a failing grade at a D+ after making the Western Conference Final last year.
Yeah, and being swept out like a broom sweeping out trash. They just swept out Big C, and they haven't rebounded. The Sacramento Kings, disappointing, is a 15-25 record. They have the great Luke Walton, came in with a lot of chaos behind him. And this team is talking about the process and Vlade Divac trusting the process. But they have a lot going on. I don't want to see them get used to losing. They have a brand new arena, just a couple of years old. They're in a great city. But how would you rate the Kings, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that struggles with too many, just like we talked about the Hawks to open up the program.
Yeah.
I'm going to give the Sacramento Kings a D, Charlton.
Speaking of, it's amazing. The San Antonio Spurs, no one would have ever thought that Coach Pop's teams would not be, a cut above 500 coming into January, Big C. There hasn't been more disappointing team this season than the Spurs. They're 17-21 near the midway point of the season. And this team has made a playoff run, but 21 seasons in a row. How would you rate the great Pop, Big C? Your thoughts?
They're struggling in many ways, and Pop can't seem to get these players motivated. I got to give the Spurs a D at this point of the season.
Got it. Never would have thought that would be the grade for a Coach Pop team. Toronto Raptors, the defending NBA champion Toronto Raptors. They've been one of the more surprising teams this season after losing the reigning Finals MVP, the great Kawhi Leonard, Big C. Well, how would you rate the good old boys from up north, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that people would have thought would have spent the whole winter's party in Charlton living on their laurels. But they've come out and they've been a challenging team in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to give the defending NBA champions a B+ at this point of the season.
Yeah, we know how the great city of Canada, or Toronto, Canada, really turned out last year. And they still turn out whether they get back to winning another championship or not. The great Utah Jazz, the Jazz, I want to get your thoughts on them. They're a team that's trying to build, and they're just, I mean, who really wants to play in Salt Lake City? Not too many people. But I want to get your thoughts on they have a great tradition of crowds showing up, selling out all the time. Give me your feeling, your thoughts. How would you grade the Utah Jazz, Big C?
Well, you know, they get a C on the team that they're intending to build. Charlton, they get an A on what they are at this point of the season. But I'm going to give them a B overall on the Utah Jazz.
The Washington Wizards, this team has been a surprising story this season. But that's all based on the style. It's not their ability to win games. Maybe it's because POTUS is close by. They're 13-26. They're in a city that just won the World Series with the Nationals, Big C. I want to get your thoughts on how you would grade the Washington Wizards, Big C. Your thoughts.
Well, the Nationals won the World Series this year. The Capitals won the Stanley Cup last year. I'm going to give the Washington Wizards a B. Even though they're trying hard, Charlton, they just can't get over the hump, but they're better than what they should be.
They're better than what they should be. And I love basketball this time of the year. It's amazing how many great things are going on in the world of the NBA. And I just appreciate being able to bring all the sports that we love covering. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the apps that I love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to pay a little bit of homage to the NBA schedule tonight as we just get some grades from Big C. It's nice to get an A on Big C's report card. Tonight's schedule, the Pistons are at the Celtics. We have the New Jersey Nets at the 76ers. The San Antonio Spurs at the Miami Heat. We have the Wizards at the Chicago Bulls. Toronto Raptors defending NBA champion. Toronto Raptors at the OKC Thunder. Indiana Pacers at the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Hornets are at the Denver Nuggets. The Trailblazers at the Houston Rockets. Will Harden get 50 tonight? The Mavericks at the Kings. And the Magic are at the LA Lakers. Arguably the best franchise in the NBA. We love so much about the sports game, Big C. I love so much talking about Hall of Famers. I still feel bad when I know that one of the great Oakland Raiders, Tom Flores, was bypassed for an induction into the Hall of Fame with 4 Super Bowl rings, part of a player and coach 1 and 2 as a coach. It just doesn't make any sense. And you would think the guys that have less than him would say, hey, wait a minute. What about this guy with the 4 rings on his finger, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I guess when it comes to the NFL Hall of Fame, the NFL is going to have to enact something that's called like the Rooney Rule for getting into the Hall of Fame. Those who actually qualify and have done their due diligence to get into that hall, Charlton, with their work within an organization.
Yeah, you would think that would be the case. I want to make sure that, again, this nefarious thing that goes on, but all the coaching spots that were open, I don't think any African-American got a head coaching job. I mean, we talk about Rooney Rule, whatever it is. I'm sure a lot of the owners, they couldn't care less about the Rooney Rule. I know they had that law enacted so people wouldn't get sued, but that's what rich people do. We still got to hold them accountable. I love doing Big C Sports. I feel bad that you don't have any football, but wait, we still have NFL playoffs coming up this week, so don't feel too sad, Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, with no football being played through this week, Charlton, I guess I'm going to have to detox and take a long nap until this weekend.
Well, as you take that long nap, I'm sure you have a lot of friends down there that watch the national championship game, you can watch too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.